Pequenquin, because she has the white tuxedo. And she's really fantastic playing with that ping pong ball in the bathtub. But you never can get her. You know, she'll do it for 30 seconds and she'll be brilliant. Time the camera gets there, she's through. And then there's no time at all to set up a 600-watt light so you can really see it. But she is, boy, she puts on a better show than any TV game Sunday or Saturday afternoon. We can review crooked lawyers and corrupt judges. Do you have a nominee this week for the crooked judge of the week or the crooked lawyer of the week? What's your nominee for the crooked lawyer of the week and the corrupt judge of the week? I have one for the corrupt judge of the week. That's Charles L. Bryant, United States District Court, Southern District of New York. In case Glendora versus Cable. This man, nobody could be more corrupt. And that's a very, very long story. And in fact, I've ended up suing him. And I ought to read you the reasons why I sued him. And then for the crooked lawyer of the week, nominee is Dennis J. Block. And he's with a law firm down in New York, Weiss and something on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And that case is Glendora versus Texaco. Peter I. Bajur, the chairman and CEO, and Carl Davidson in charge of investor relations. They violated the New York State Business Corporation Law, Section 624 and Section 718. It's a very interesting case. I wish I had time to read it to you, but right now, this is headline news. There are so many bad things happening in the court, there isn't time to read you all of the papers the way I used to. Instead, we'll have to do what CNN News does. We have to do what the 6 p.m. news does. We just can give you a minute and a half per story. So, first of all, what did the judge say to the dentist? What did the judge say to the dentist? Do you swear to pull the tooth, the whole tooth, and nothing but the tooth? And why was the baby shoe crying? Why was the baby shoe crying? His mother was a sneak and his daddy was a loafer. This is a poem by Kipling, Rudyard Kipling, very famous poem. It's called If. And if you can do all of the things that we reformers are doing, day in and day out, and take all the buffs and all of the setbacks and all of the crookedness of the lawyers and the corruption of the judges, the poem ends. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. That will leave for Bruiser Ken, who is just the antithesis of that. Headline news. Chat with Glendora for videotaping on April the 13th, day after Easter, 1998, Anno Domini, and for cable casting the last week in April, I believe. The United States Supreme Court judges, 8 out of 9, all run away from Glendora. Glendora comes to them with what is wrong in the United States Court of Appeals, what is wrong in the United States District Court. But they don't want to hear it. They run the other way. They are the mercenary court. They have denied Glendora's informa pauperis 3 times. They've granted Glendora's informa pauperis 19 times. Now something's got to be wrong with your head. Now this is all except for Justice Stevens. He dissents. Congratulations. The United States Supreme Court is the mercenary court. They really aren't any good to us. They cost us a lot of money. They don't do us any good. I think I've taken 23 cases to them. 19 they approved the informa pauperis and they just wouldn't hear the case. And 3 cases went to them and through the collusion with the United States Court of Appeals, which is just about one of the crookedest courts we have, through collusion with the U.S. Court of Appeals Second Circuit, they have denied the informer paupers. I cannot afford $300, can you, to go to the United States Supreme Court with a case, Americans' rights, like jury trial, okay, and like all kinds of things that are American. I can't go to them because I can't afford the fee. It's $300. And what will they do? They will just say, well, the court met this morning and considered your petition and it's denied. They've done that 19 times. And an informer pauperis is not a matter of opinion. An informer pauperis is a matter of fact. So I have nothing good to report to you on the U.S. Court of Appeals. I mean the the U.S. Court of Appeals, and certainly the United States Supreme Court. The quote of the week is Robert Goldberg of Jericho. He states that he saw a chat with Glendora, that it was in the tradition of the great muckrakers of the turn of the century, pointing out what is wrong and trying to stop people from getting away with it. We thank you, Robert, and that certainly is the intent and purpose of a chat with Glendora at the moment. Glendora and Franklin see the Cablevision books. The Supreme Court, State of New York, County of Westchester, Justice John P. as in Peter, de Blasi, made me jump through all the hoops, but in the end I won, and Cablevision had to capitulate, and on April the 7th, 1998, Tuesday, Anno Domini, I went to the Cablevision headquarters and got what I had been asking for 5 years, my right as a shareholder under the New York State Business Corporation Law, Section 624, a shareholder can see the books, the records, and the minutes. And the first thing that we saw was a shareholder book for 1994 and the shareholder book for 1995. Finally, Cablevision has been brought to the law and dealt with by the law. Cablevision had to capitulate. Peter Wunsch nominates Glendora as director for Cablevision Systems Corporation, and Carl Ancesera seconds it. And Glendora will nominate Peter Wunsch, or maybe one of the other shareholders will nominate Peter Wunsch, such as Ray Jameson, or Dr. Rebecca Carley, or Richard Einhorn, and maybe B. Cohen and her husband will nominate Peter Wunsch as a director. Peter Wunsch lives in East Northport, New York. He is also running for the school board there, and I highly commend to you that you vote for him. Americans for Legal Reform picketed the Suffolk County Bar Association dinner. That was on Monday, Thursday, I believe. Monday, Thursday. No, it was on Wednesday. Wednesday of Holy Week. And the report there is that it was at Islandia, across from Cablevision. There's a hotel there in Islandia. And Good for Americans for Legal Reform, they picketed. And the report from Colonel Ancesera is that the police were there. There were 4 police cars, and sort of threatening them and disarming them to arrest them. But they really can't resist. They really can't arrest them without you and I and the rest of us a huge protest under the First Amendment right. Free speech. So again, this is this week's headlines on crooked lawyers and corrupt judges. I would like your nominee, I repeat, for the Crooked Lawyer of the Week. I would like your nominee for the Corrupt Judge of the Week. Glendora and Franklin find a good judge, John P. de Blasi. Judges in general are crooks. Now they are trying to lock us up or shut us up by putting us in prison and on an excuse of something that we never did. As you know, we went to the Uniondale Courthouse, Uniondale, Long Island, to check up on our Glendora shareholder versus the Board of Directors of Cablevision. And we went there to check up on that suit, which was filed in the Eastern District of New York at Uniondale. We wanted to go to the clerk's office and see what the status of the suit was. We got beat up by a brute, an insane man, Bruiser Ken, Kenneth H. Mildworm, inflicted 6 bruises on Glendora and socked Franklin, 78 years old, in the jaw, sprawled both of us on the floor. We sued him immediately, cowardly. He lies and covers it up and said we assaulted him. And we never touched him, of course. We never would. But this is being used as an excuse to lock Franklin and Glendora up for 4 months in jail, plus 4 months of home confinement and other things. And the fake sentencing on that is April the 24th at 10 a.m., I believe, in the Brooklyn courthouse. A denizen of evil. 225 Cadman Plaza East. Now, hermeneutics is a word about biblical interpretations. So this certainly applies here. And predilection is, you can watch it unfold here every week on A Chat with Glendora. It is what judges use when they want things their way and use their power that you give them for self-interest. And then ineffable, collusion, conspiracy, and preconception. The courts are a flip of the coin, a roll of the dice. The courts are a flip of the coin and a roll of the dice. Now, what do you call a large, thick-skinned animal with hooves? Did you say a lawyer? Did you say judge? No. It's a pachyderm. And the last thing to report to you about courts is they do not rule by the law. They do not rule by the facts. They rule by the seat of their pants. We continue headline news for A Chat with Glendora. The week of April the 13th, the week after Easter. Headline news, there are no black Pinkertons. I have never seen a black Pinkerton at the Uniondale Court in Long Island. I have never seen a black Pinkerton at the White Plains Federal Court, 300 Quaropus, White Plains. Quaropus is the Indian word for White Plains. They stood down there where the Westchester Mall is in the morning, and they would see, you know, White Plains is a swamp, and they would see the water rise in the morning sun, and it would make the plains white. So Quaropus. There are no black Pinkertons at the Westbury Bankruptcy Court. There are no black Pinkertons in Brooklyn at the court, 225 Cadman Plaza East, that I have seen. Similarly, there are no female Pinkertons in any of those places. Remember that on income tax, April 15th, James P. McCloskey, CEO and chairman, and Dennis R. Brown, president of Pinkerton Security and Detective Services, Inc., has to answer why Pinkerton John at the White Plains Federal Court tossed Glendora's audio tape recorder and let it fall 4 inches. They have to answer to that on Wednesday, April 15th, this week. Now, this is what we call the New York Lawless Journal. We report on the law-breaking of lawyers and judges. The Lampoon Law Journal. We had to do 35 legal papers this week. That, of course, takes away your life. You have no life left. I have no life for you people. I want to help you more. I have no life left to help the other people in Americans for Legal Reform. I have no life left to help other public access producers who are brave enough to reveal to you the law-breaking of lawyers and judges, and also politicians. It is World War II all over again. Franklin went from D-Day to Victory in Europe Day, VE Day. He went from Normandy, D-Day, all the way to Weimar, doing what stopped the Holocaust, doing what should have stopped injustice. But now it all rears its ugly head here in America today in 1998. It's World War II all over again. You may not be old enough to remember World War II, but when I was in high school, we called it the duration. We couldn't do this, we couldn't do that, and this was not done right, and this was not completed. We'll have to wait for the duration of the war. So that's where we are now. 1 week it was 42 legal papers. Some of these legal papers take as long as 12 and a half hours. The one yesterday did. The one on Good Friday took 8.5 hours. The United States District Court, the Southern District of New York, loses. Glendora filed a grievance against Robert M. Callaghy, a lawyer for hire. His law firm is Sadley, Stevens, Burke & Burke, 230 Park Avenue, New York, New York, 10169. This is the address of the Chief Judge of the State of New York, Judith Kaye. So a grievance has been filed against him, third time. The first time, isn't it strange? The first time it never got to the grievance committee on attorneys. Where did it end up? In the pit called the pro se clerk's office. Second time, went up to the executive of the district court, United States District Court, Southern District of New York, his office. Where do you file a grievance? Well, Judge Patterson used to be the head of the grievance committee. Now it's Judge Scheinlein. Well, how do you spell her name? S-C-H-E-I-N-D-L-I-N. Shira, I believe, is her first name. Months and months go by. What happened to the grievance that was filed in Christmas, 1997? Oh, well, what grievance? We filed a grievance against Robert M. Callaghy. Oh. Wow. 4 or 5 weeks later, we get a telephone call on the recorder. We can't find your grievance. Would you send us another one? Okay. So we sent another one. And what did that take? That took another 5 hours. But it was good because we had an opportunity to add that crooked lawyer Robert M. Callaghy lost the Cablevision case, New York State Business Corporation Law. Section 24, Cablevision has to show the shareholder the books, the records, and the minutes. Thank you. Justice of the Supreme Court, John P. de Blasi. The United States District Court is a constant terror and a constant abuser of human rights. It's personified by one George Lange, 123, George Lange III. Joseph McLaughlin is a judge on the United States Court of Appeals, and he's almost human. It took, of course, hours and hours for Glendora's appellant's brief for Glendora versus Magnus, Bob Magnus, the billionaire who robbed us of public access editing in White Plains, the so-called Westchester system, central Westchester, that would be 21 towns. All that's left is New Rochelle and Pelham. We've been robbed of our public access programs in 18 communities in central Westchester. That was by John C. Malone, another very crooked billionaire. But anyway, Bob Magnus robbed it, our public access editing in the central Westchester system on Halloween, and he died. On Halloween night, it was very spooky, the last editing at White Plains. But even spookier was the grave of Robert. Well, he did never call himself Robert, of Bob Magnus, and he couldn't take the money with him that he saved. And so that case was crookedly dealt with by one very corrupt judge, Barbara S. Jones, a former United States attorney. They make horrible judges. Horrible judges. That case is long. I should take time to read you that case. The appellant's brief on that. That costs like $35 for all the printing and the postage, and it costs like 15 hours work. The judges do not do their work. That's one thing. But two, folks, they don't do their duty towards you. They have a duty toward you to uphold the Constitution of the United States, to uphold America, to enforce the statute of Congress. They don't do this. They abuse their power. The bench is a personal tool to wreak vengeance and to award friends. As Franklin says, the United States Court of Appeals shuffles papers, but never deals justice. So what's the answer to all this? One, you picket outside the courthouses. Two, you report about them to you on TV and expose them. Three, you sue them. That's all you're left with. Sue judges. If you sue them on civil rights, they have no immunity. This was the big battle after the Civil War. Title 42, United States Code, Section 1983, Civil Rights. You are endowed with civil rights. If anybody violates those civil rights, that anybody is accountable to you, and sue them for millions. Now, there was the big battle after this battle of the Civil War was, are judges immune? Finally, this judges lost. They are not immune if they violate your civil rights. Section 1985 is conspiracy, violating your civil rights under conspiracy. And judges are full, are rank with conspiracy. And do it pro se. Do not be afraid. You simply have to go to the law library, and it's a state law of the Empire State that every county has to have a Supreme Court library. So go to your county Supreme Court library. In Westchester is White Plains. In Long Island it's Mineola. Okay? In the Supreme Court building. Go to the library. You'll find the librarians quite helpful, quite knowledgeable, with a few exceptions. And just read the law. Find the law that they broke and write a simple complaint. Such and such was going on. This is what so-and-so did. And this is the relief I demand. And always say on your complaint, first thing, jury trial demanded. If you don't say that on your complaint the first thing, some crooked judge, after a certain period, will let that expire and then say, oh, no, you can't have a jury trial. And that's the 7th Amendment of the Bill of Rights. This is headline news. What happened this week with crooked lawyers and corrupt judges. Who is your nominee this week for Crooked Lawyer of the Week? Who is your nominee for Corrupt Judge of the Week? This is the week in review. Pro se beats Park Avenue lawyer again. Glendora pro se beats Park Avenue lawyer Robert M. Callaghan again. And who's the offender? Who's the lawbreaker? Again, Cablevision. Being Easter, Holy Week, just over, we say, forgive them, God, for they know not what they do. Folks, how you doing today? Just miserable, right? These little kitty cats, these are pictures, drawings. And you know, the television camera is not as graphic as you know as the photographic camera. That's tautological. But I just admire the artist who drew these pictures. And when you see them with a naked eye, look at that, an artist doing that. These are not photographs. You know, you just can't help but admire God's creation as it's expressed through people. Of course, through cats also. From that puss to this puss, we have some interesting telephone conversations to play for you.
These are new batteries, or one new battery. And this is audio tape 938. And this is April the 10th, 1998.
Stuart Grossman. Pictures. And when you see them with a naked eye, look at that, an artist doing that. These are not photographs. You know, you just can't help but admire God's creation as it's expressed through people. Of course, through cats also. From that puss to this puss, we have some interesting telephone conversations to play for you.
These are new batteries, or one new battery. And this is audio tape 938. And this is April the 10th, 1998.
Stuart Grossman. My legal advisor on Glendora on the Bruiser Ken beat up.
Thursday, April 9th. Hi, Crystal, it's Dana, and I got your message. I've no problem writing a letter just saying, you know, I'm Mr. Dave's legal aid attorney, and he was deemed informed the person to send it to, Jane Ann, is Mr. George Lange, Lange the third, 123, at the United States Court of Appeals, room 1702, 40 Foley Square, New York, New York, 10007, 10007. That's right, and what you outlined in your telephone call, so what you would say is exactly the target. It was just a year ago today that you and Ramos wanted to stop the calendar, and you went and told ASRAC, and then ASRAC, being Passover, stayed it for another week, so there was 2 weeks hiatus, just a year ago today. We would like to see you, and we would like to talk to you, so maybe we can bring that about. And thank you very much. What do you call a miniature guppy? A microfiche. Bye-bye. Fucking retarded.
That was Scott Lord. Do you remember Scott Lord? You remember Scott Lord? He ordered 10 commercials on WCBS TV Channel 2, Glendora TV ads, and I went and I made the commercials, and then his checks bounced. Remember that? $2,500. And I sued him in Westchester Court, Supreme Court, State of New York of Westchester. Of course, he did what Scott Lord always does. He defaulted. The judgment was given in my favor. And then I tried to collect it, and I chased that man for 8 years. And every time he reneged and he lost his license with the Department of Consumer Affairs, Nassau County. And he told the county attorney of Nassau that he would pay the money. And then the day of the payment, instead of doing it, he went bankrupt on 2 companies, Atlantis Lawn Sprinkler and Atlantis Plumbing. And I pointed out the fraud in the bankruptcy petitions, and then an action was brought against him. He was convicted of fraudulent conveyances, he and Jeffrey Barnes and Jan Stahl. And then the trustee on the case was Richard O'Connell, and he stalled and stalled and stalled, and finally I got him operational, and I got my payment. The amount was something like $4,500, but this is a great bankruptcy victory. It was 87 cents on the dollar, and I got paid something like $3,500 or something like that. Now, I want to tell you, if anybody calls you to have an underground lawn sprinkling system installed, you ask them, who owns the company? Scott Lord? If they say yes, stop right then. If they say no, check it out. Because he operates on under all different kinds of names. He used to change his address every year. He used to change his company name every year. He used to change his lawyers 2 or 3 times a year. So beware of that, and don't let happen to you what happened to us, although we came out and landed on our feet. So this really comes out of the blue because the last action on that was 1995 when I got the check from the... Oh, and also came out of that, of course, with Joseph Derby, who took my tape recorder, or my tape player, that had an abusive, much worse than this, and much more vile. Several of these. Anyway, I had one particular one I wanted to play to bankruptcy judge John Robert Hall. And Derby took my tape recorder, and when I asked for it to be produced so I could play the recording for the judge, showing the abuse by Scott Lord, Derby refused to give it to me. He stole my property. This is a violation of due process, violation of the Fifth Amendment Bill of Rights. So I sued Derby, and I announced it on TV. Now Derby turns out to, Pinkerton, Joseph Derby, turns out to be a friend of Pinkerton, Kenneth H. Mildworm, Bruiser Ken, and that was part of the insane motive of Bruiser Ken to beat up Franklin and me on February the 18th, 1997, a year and 2 months ago. So now there are several lawsuits on that. Of course, I immediately sued Glendora versus Bruiser Ken in February, and then the whole conspiracy, the Eastern District started to cover up Bruiser Ken's terrible crime, two crimes, double assault. And then Franklin filed a RICO suit against Bruiser Ken and the marshals and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney for their fraud to the American public, stealing your tax money to cover up the crime of Bruiser Ken. And then he started a whole bunch of cowardly lies about it, and that case is called Buell versus Mildworm. That's Franklin's lawsuit. I am not a party to the action in that. And now the judge on that is Eileen R. Ross, United States District Judge, Eastern District of New York, 225 Cadman Plaza East. Franklin made a motion for summary judgment in his favor because Bruiser Ken and all the rest of them have no meritorious defense. They never will have. They trumped up an action, selected us to be prosecuted or persecuted. It has no basis. It is all lies. And so this very lawyer in Jericho, Todd Manister, wrote an opposition to the motion for summary judgment in Franklin's favor on the basis of no meritorious defense. And here is Franklin's paper, his reply affidavit to that opposition, stating again that he should have summary judgment in his favor because the defendants, Mildworm, Quinn, the marshals, the United States Attorney, and the FBI trumped up a case, made a false arrest, and put Franklin through the hoops for a year and 2 months. And therefore, they have no meritorious defense. And here is Franklin's paper, read by Franklin.
This paper is an affidavit by Franklin Buell in Glendora on April 10th, 1998. It's case number 98 Civ 0421. Judge Ross in the Eastern District of New York, the U.S. District Court. And Franklin F. Buell is the plaintiff, and it's against Kenneth H. Mildworm, Raymond J. Sullivan, John McHale, Anthony McHale, John Doe 5, John Doe 6, and John Doe 7, who were personnel at the security checkpoint at the Uniondale Courthouse on February 18th, 1997, 9:25 to 9:40 a.m. Pinkerton Security and Detective Services, James P. McCloskey, Dennis B. Brown, Patrick Quinn, Larry Parker, Larry Nevins, Thomas Kwiatkowski, and Edgardo Ramos. I, Franklin Buell, and Glendora, swear under penalty of perjury that we have always told you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us God. We have told you the same in this paper attached. We never assaulted Kenneth H. Mildworm. Kenneth H. Mildworm assaulted us. He inflicted 6 bruises on Glendora and socked Franklin on the jaw, sprawling both of us on the floor. And that's signed by Franklin Buell and Glendora and notarized. Now this is the reply affirmation by Franklin Buell to the opposition by Pinkertons to deny Franklin's motion for summary judgment in his favor as a matter of law. And this is dated April 10th, and it goes to the Eastern District of New York of the United States District Court. Part of the opposition's reply to my motion was a sworn affidavit by Mr. Mildworm, and we replied to that in full. And this is the affidavit by Mr. Mildworm with our replies, with our comments. Kenneth H. Mildworm, being duly sworn, deposes and says, 1. I am a defendant in the above entitled action, sued herein as Bruiser Ken, and submit this affidavit in opposition to the motion of Franklin Buell for summary judgment. Well, this is wrong. This could be construed as lie number 1780, 1780. He was not sued herein as Bruiser Ken. He was sued as Kenneth H. Mildworm. 2. I am a special Deputy United States Marshal Court Security Officer at the United States District Court, Eastern District of New York, Uniondale Courthouse. I was such an officer on February 18th, 1997, when the plaintiff and his wife, Glendora Buell, assaulted me while in the course of the performance of my duties. These are Mildworm lies number 1782 and 1783. I never assaulted Mildworm nor anyone else, and Glendora never assaulted Mildworm or anybody else. 4. Lie number 1784 is that Mildworm leaves out that he assaulted Franklin. Nearly twice Franklin's weight and nearly 30 years younger, Mildworm socked Franklin in the jaw, sprawling me to the floor. 5. The affidavit also says that, or no, it doesn't say. It leaves out that he assaulted Glendora, inflicted 6 bruises on her, and dropped her to the floor. See the videotape. That was lie number 1785. Mr. Mildworm also omitted that Franklin never touched Mildworm. That's lie number 1786. And he also admitted that Glendora never touched Mildworm, and that Mr. Mildworm did all of the touching. which is in fact what happened. As you can see from the distance we've gone so far, Mr. Mildworm's affidavit contains errors and mistakes, and it also is incomplete in that it omits a lot of pertinent details. Another one of the omissions is that Mr. Mildworm leaves out that he robbed Franklin and Glendora of their Rule 77 Federal Rules of Civil Procedure right to go to the clerk's office and check on Glendora shareholder versus the Board of Directors, Cablevision Systems Corporation et al. That was an action that Glendora finally won just last week in the Supreme Court, State of New York, County of Westchester. Mr. Mildworm also omitted that he said we would have to leave the courthouse when he had no cause. He also says that in the course of the performance of my duties, Mildworm was on a personal frolic to avenge Pinkerton Joseph Derby, his buddy, whom Glendora sued in 1992 for violating her civil rights by not releasing her tape and player so that she could play her evidence against a creditor to the judge in bankruptcy court in Westbury. Glendora reported Derby's lawbreaking on TV, and First Amendment retaliation is not in, quote, the course of the performance of my duties, as Mildworm said. He does not paginate his so-called affidavit, but what we've just reported was at the bottom of his first page. Then Mr. Mildworm's affidavit says, as a result of this physical confrontation, this is line number 1792. It takes two to confront. We did not confront. He did all of the touching. The affidavit by Mr. Mildworm does not tell you that he slammed our $150 tape recorder onto the desk in the lobby of the courthouse. He does not say that he snarled through clenched teeth, "You're not going to get a receipt." Mr. Mildworm does not say that he was over the top and had to be restrained 6 times by fellow Pinkertons. Hear the audio tape. It shows his excessive force and neurotic, if not psychotic, state of mind and physical excess. The affidavit by Mr. Mildworm does not say that he trumped up these, quote, criminal charges. That's lie number 1796. If you want to interested in keeping count of this grossly erroneous report by Mildworm. Then he goes on to say criminal charges were filed against the plaintiff and his wife. However, the affidavit by Mr. Mildworm did not say that he failed to swear under penalty of perjury that he was telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help him God. The affidavit also omits any indication that Federal Bureau of Investigation agent Kwiatkowski failed on oath on the same to Magistrate Levy. Mr. Kwiatkowski wrote the criminal complaint, but it had no oath that it was the truth and the whole truth. Another incorrect item is Mr. Kwiatkowski failed to sign the arrest warrant. The arrest warrant was an excessive thing also, when a summons would have brought us to court. He included no facts and succumbed to conclusory statements, violating two Fourth Amendment requirements, thus making Mr. Mildworm's criminal charges unconstitutional, which would deprive Magistrate Azrak of any jurisdiction. Neither does Mr. Mildworm's affidavit state that the FBI stole our criminal charges against him, that he be immediately arrested. These criminal charges were filed by us with the Nassau County Police, 1st Precinct in Baldwin. Mr. Mildworm's affidavit goes on to say that he testified at the criminal trial held before Magistrate Judge Azrak in the Brooklyn courthouse. But Mr. Mildworm's affidavit does not tell you that he lied under oath 60 times. Franklin knows he lied. Glendora knows he lied. John McHale knows he lied. Anthony McHale knows. Sullivan knows. God knows that Mr. Mildworm lied. And Mr. Mildworm himself knows he lied. He committed perjury over 60 times. He knows this, and he knows his motive is and was cowardice. The affidavit also fails to say that the trumped-up criminal action was, the purpose of it was to cover up Mr. Mildworm's horrible double assault, to force us to drop the civil suit, and to force us to stop the reports on TV exposing his crime. He also would use the criminal suit to stop collaterally the civil suit, which Magistrate Judge Go has illegally allowed for 1 year and 1 month. Nor does Mr. Mildworm in his affidavit tell the truth that there were no outside witnesses, only his buddies who committed suborned perjury. Neither does the affidavit tell you that we were robbed of our right to an Article III judge. Nor that Mr. Mildworm failed to call News 12 personnel as witnesses. Mr. Sullivan et al. Testified that News 12 was there and watching what happened. Nor does the affidavit mention that the witnesses at the trial, the in-house witnesses, contradicted each other and got their words and descriptions all mixed up. The affidavit says, following deliberations, the jury convicted Franklin Buell and his wife, Glendora Buell, of the criminal assault perpetrated against me. But there was no criminal assault perpetrated against Mr. Mildworm. Glendora did not assault Mildworm. Glendora did not, quote, criminally assault Mildworm. And neither did Franklin. Neither did I. Mr. Mildworm does not tell you in his affidavit that the biggest Pinkerton of all, who weighs about 300 pounds, was chosen to sit outside the jurors' door as they deliberated and to lead them to and from the courtroom. It does not note that the Pinkerton was not put under oath, nor does the affidavit inform you that the FBI agent sat at the prosecutor's table and glared at the jurors for days to intimidate them not to exercise their First Amendment rights for fear of retaliation. He had their names, addresses, and telephone numbers. Mr. Mildworm's affidavit also says, I have read the notice of motion of Franklin and am advised by my attorney that the motion is fatally defective in that Buell offers no legal or factual support for the motion. I would note that this is suborned perjury. It is a lie that Franklin's motion is defective, let alone fatally defective.
Flowers and fragrances. A note to you, Mr. Joseph Panio, that the Emergency Tenant Protection Act is for tenants, not for landlords. Now, I have no faith in the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal. They rule in favor of landlords. The Emergency Tenant Protection Act is for tenants. So Mr. Panio is a puppet in higher hands, and I'm going to report to you, pick up where we left off last week on Glendora and Franklin versus Rosanna, Joanne Freya, John Porzio, Friedrich Lehrman, Mark A. Guterman, and Jane Doe, court stenographer, defendants. This lawsuit was filed following the February 19th rank Gestapo violation of human rights by one Rosanna Washington, a part-time judge for the city court of the city of White Plains. And it was filed the next morning, Friday, February 20th. It cost $150 to file it. It was assigned to Judge Robert Sweet. A motion to dismiss came from a New York State Assistant Attorney General. This is a horrible thing that Joanne Freya and Rosanna Washington should make the state, should make you pay for their incompetence. They're already being paid for incompetence as to their so-called work at the bench. And then when they violate people's rights, particularly tenants' rights, and then are sued for that they shouldn't pay for their own defense. Instead, they make the taxpayers. So it's double jeopardy on you taxpayers. We had read up through page 6 last week. We resume, and this is Glendora and Franklin's reply affidavit to the Assistant Attorney General. Her name is what is the first name? Sandra A. Pam, and her initials are SAP. And here's paragraph 22. By the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 12, SAP's partial motion to dismiss Glendora's complaint must be denied for failure of Rosanna, Joanne, Jane Doe, the court stenographer who refused her name and address and telephone number, and SAP to state a meritorious defense. They have no defense to that. You cannot defend robbing a citizen's right to trial by jury. You cannot defend robbing a citizen of the right to in personam jurisdiction. You cannot defend sewer service which Joanne Freya and Rosanna Washington condone. Glendora's affirmation of February 20th, 1998 documents the trampling of federal rights by rogue Rosanna. It is Part B of this affirmation in opposition to dismissing Glendora's complaint. Glendora's affirmation of February 26. Now that was all read to you on TV a couple of weeks ago. Glendora's affirmation of February 26, 1998 documents that Rosanna lied, stole, and cheated and violated the federal civil rights of 2 Americans. It is Part C of this affirmation in opposition to dismissing the complaint of Glendora and Franklin. '25. Glendora and Franklin contemplate a motion for summary judgment on all 5 defendants on the grounds defendants have no meritorious defense and never can have summary judgment in our favor as a matter of law. To dismiss 97 Civ 1242, that's Glendora and Franklin versus Rosanna, Joanne, Guterman, Lehrman, Porzio, and the court stenographer. Glendora and Franklin contemplate a motion for summary judgment on all 5 defendants on the grounds that defendants have no meritorious defense and never can have summary judgment is in our favor as a matter of law. To dismiss 97 Civ 1242 on the phony papers submitted by SAP, that's the Assistant Attorney General, State of New York, March 12, 1998, would be consumer fraud, wasting $150 would it cost Franklin to file this lawsuit while Rosanna and Joanne get theirs free and make New Yorkers pay their parasitic law-breaking, would not be in good faith and would be frivolous. SAP's entire paper is in bad faith. SAP has included no affidavits from defendants, hers or others. 14th Amendment, federal question, equal protection of the law. Remember that, folks. You have a constitutional right to equal protection of the law by the state courts. The state courts have to give you equal protection of the law. 14th Amendment, even though that's a federal question, constitutional question. But it was there because the states might just rob you of your rights and might just rob you of your equal protection of the law. Freya and Washington robbed us of equal protection of the law, of in personam jurisdiction, of right to a Travis hearing. You know what that is? When this liar, Wayne Cheatham, and this other liar, Patrick Rudo, stated that they served Glendora in person. They did this under penalty of perjury, notarized, that they served Glendora in person at her home in White Plains, and she was in Long Island all day. But Joanne Freya just let that go. That was one thing to let it go, but number 2, she absolutely turned deaf ears to our Travis hearing, another right. So, Freya and Washington robbed us of equal protection of the law, of in personam jurisdiction, of right to Travis hearing, of right to press criminal charges on Rudo, Cheatham, and Mark A. Guterman for filing false documents. Guterman is a liar. Lawyers always lie. Of orders in writing, Freya and Washington, crookedly, do not put their orders in writing. They robbed us of a hearing, the audio-taped record, when there are no stenographic minutes. We asked several times to hear the minutes. There was no court stenographer. We asked to hear the audio tape, and Freya refused. Of our right to make our own audio taped record. Now there's the rub. We should go into court. We should be able to make our own audio taped record. That is a basic right that we are being robbed of. And you want to know why they don't want an audio tape? Because they don't want you to know how bad they are. They don't want to let it out to you, what they're doing. So this is why they hide, run, and scamper when you ask to audio tape it. Absolutely not. of robbing us of our right to trial by jury, the 7th Amendment, Rule 38, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Real Property Actions Law, and Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law, Section 745, which says we can have a jury. We demand a jury, we can have it. Of trial to end with respondents completing their presentation of evidence, not with Rosanna saying Thursday, the trial will be finished tomorrow, Friday. How's that for Gestapo? On Thursday, Rosanna Washington says the trial will be ended on Friday. And we had no chance to present our evidence. Robbed us of our right to prevent 8 hours of videotaped evidence and 5 hours of audiotaped evidence that showed every petitioner witness had lied under oath. Never got a chance to show our evidence. One petitioner witness was a personal friend of Rosanna, and Rosanna assiduously protected said witness from Glendora's telling cross-examination. Robbed us of our right, this is Rosanna and Joanne Freer, of our right to present exhibits and enter them into the record, of our right to rely on Rosanna's order, all proceedings adjourned in White Plains Court pending determination of the action in the federal court. She ruled this. I have 3 witnesses to it, actually 4, who heard her on September 2nd, the day after Labor Day, 1997, rule that since she was a defendant in a federal lawsuit, now this is the first time we sued her. This paper is about the second time we sued her. Anyway, since she was a defendant in a federal lawsuit, that the action in the White Plains City Court was adjourned pending decision of the federal court. And then she didn't keep her word on that. The first complaint about Rosanna is still in the federal court, but she went ahead, went back on her word, went back on her own decision, and continued this trial in the White Plains City Court. That's how crooked Rosanna Washington is. Of our right to have this order held when we presented an embossed, certified docket showing that the action is pending in the United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit. Of Franklin's right to speak and cross-examine at trial. Of our right to cross-examine without 80 interruptions by Lehrman and 40 interruptions by Rosanna. They had to cover up the truth. I was bringing out the truth. And they had to jump in and interrupt. And of course, they had to take away my right to audiotape this, to play it for you. Of our right to finish our cross-exam and not be cut off by Rosanna. Of our right to a certified or registered notice by mail. This is a Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law, Section 735. And it says, and in addition, within 1 day after such delivery of the notice of petition to such suitable person or such affixing, by mailing to the respondent by registered or certified mail. And Rosanna Washington and Joanne Freer were so crooked that they just broke that law. They just up and broke it arrogantly. And now the state of New York is paying for their defense. Robbed us of our right to make motions to the court and not be gagged. All of my motions pointed out laws that Guterman and Lehrman and Porzio and Freer and Washington were busting. And so, to stop this, Rosanna gags me from making any motions. How's that for due process? How's that for First Amendment? Robbing us of our right not to be bullied and bulldozed by a tyrant, Rosanna Washington. Of our right to a decision written after the trial and not during the trial at the bench. I kid you not. That woman was writing her decision while the trial was going on. And then she has the audacity to call it decision after trial. It's decision during trial. Actually, it's preconception. It's decision before the trial. of robbing us of our right to an order correctly dated February the 20th, 1998 is when she made it, when it was written, at the bench, and crookedly dated February 24th, 1998, 4 days later. This is how crooked, dishonest, and dishonorable Rosanna Washington is. Of our right to an honest, honorable judge, not somebody who lies, steals, and cheats, robbed of our right to a fair, impartial, plenary adjudication without prejudice, hate, and self-interest, robbed us of our right to an appealable order, not a decision after trial. Rosanna, don't you know you can't appeal a decision? You can only appeal an order. A judge ought to know that. Of our right to the truth, a decision during trial, of our right to an appealable order, again, of our right to be present when issues are presented to the judge, so-called, and not ex parte every day by Guterman, who comes to the White Plains Court on other actions, and not with Lehrman going behind the courtroom into the judge's chambers every trial date. Robbed of our right to adjudication by a judge, not a defendant in a federal lawsuit brought against us, brought against her by us. Parenthesis. When this action was brought, the morning of February 20th, 1998, that afternoon Rosanna should have had the sense to recuse, but she bulldozed her way through the whole last day, and the last determined by her yesterday, not by evidence to be presented. In other words, she determined when the trial was over, the day before. She wasn't going to wait for our evidence. Evidence is what ends a trial, when the defense rests its case, when the plaintiffs rest their case. But she decided that the trial was just going to be over Friday at 5 o'clock. And so she should have recused herself in those few hours after she was named again as a defendant in a federal lawsuit. You understand that this is our affirmation, and maybe it's an affidavit, to Robert A. Sweet, United States District Judge, Southern District of New York, in opposition to the Assistant Attorney General, SAP, S-A-P, motion to dismiss our case, which is a dumb thing to do because she's not speaking for all of the defendants. Indeed, the other defendants, Guterman, Lehrman, and Porzio, have not even appeared. Dumb. Robbing us of our right to our day in court, robbing us of an impartial ruling as to our lawsuits, fights for rights, not as to Rosanna's self-interest, since she and Freya are defendants. How can a judge be objective in those circumstances? When you've sued a judge and you have a case before said judge, how can said judge be objective? Now these are the failings, the failures of Joanne Freya and Rosanna Washington, White Plains City Court, so-called. Robbing us of our right to live in a building that has that does not have a certificate of, it's robbing us of our right to live in a building that does have a certificate of occupancy. Porzio has none. And the White Plains Building Department should come down on him. Robbing us of our right to equal protection of the law was violated by Rosanna Washington and Joanne Freya as to warranty of habitability, Section 235B of the real property law, Section 223B, retaliation by a landlord. You understand, folks, that if you report a landlord to the authorities, his violations of such things as your warranty of habitability, the lighting, the furnace, the heat, safety, if you complain to the authorities about him, he cannot retaliate and have you evicted. But that's what happened in this case. In a real court, that wouldn't happen. But in this phony court of Joanne Freer and Rosanna Washington, it did happen, and how? Robbed us of Section 745, the Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law, trial by jury. To say nothing of the Seventh Amendment to the Bill of Rights. Harassment by landlord because we reported him to the White Plains Police for spitting in Glendora's face, to the White Plains Building Department for violation of New York State Fire and Building Code, to the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal for violation of warranty of habitability, water in the cellar every time it rained, and no hot water at 5 a.m. and no heat and hot water over 67 failures. Another right violated is by the Real Property Law 235D, harassment. A landlord cannot harass you to move. Porzio did this. Porzio lied over 12 times in court. Caesar Eurythia, suborned perjury, was made to lie by Porzio and Lehrman. And of course, Lehrman's lies are uncounted, but estimated it's about 60. And Guterman. And here is case law from the New York Law Journal. Landlord cannot evict tenant, retaliatory defense not rebutted. That's in real courts. But in the kangaroo court of Rosanna Washington and Joanne Freer, controlling law is not apparent. They don't even know the law of the unified court system of the state of New York for the city courts of the state of New York. They don't even know that. And then we have the biggest law of all that they broke, that a landlord has to give 6 months notice or warning before he files a notice of termination. Well, wait a second. The notice of termination has to be about a wrongful act, quote unquote, that occurred only 6 months before, not more than 6 months before. This happened repeatedly in the dumb court of Rosanna Washington, and she chose to ignore it. No, it's not really ignore, she actually chose to violate it. And then the other part of the law says that if the so-called wrongful act is cured in 10 days, then the action is dropped. Well, none of these alleged wrongful acts ever occurred after the 10-day cure period. Most of these wrongful acts, alleged wrongful acts, occurred years before the 6 months before the notice of termination. Folks, you just got to know your rights. You want to know where to go? You go to the Supreme Court Library, State of New York. It's a state of law that Westchester County has to have a Supreme Court Library. It's on the 9th floor of the County Courthouse, 111 Grove Street, with all of its leaks from the ceiling and down the walls. You go there to the 9th floor and you look up the Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law. You look up the Real Property Law, okay? And you look up the Multiple Dwelling Law. Multiple Housing Law. I think best the Multiple Dwelling Law. And you just read them. It's great reading. The law is great reading. And then to see it mangled in courts by people like Washington and Freer, it just turns your stomach. Porzio never issued any warning 6 months before. This shows you his action burst out of the blue with vengeance, retaliation, and harassment, a baseless lawsuit, and Rosanna and Joanne gave him what he wanted, regardless of justice. I thought a court was there for justice. Didn't you? You know, is that asking so much? That judges should give you justice? Why do judges have to fall into the pit of their own self-interest? Any alleged wrongful acts never happened after the 10-day March 18th cure date. But Rosanna and Joanne, bent on Stygian motives, failed to give us equal protection of these laws. And that is my case against them in the federal court, because that's the 14th Amendment, Bill of Rights, equal protection of the law. As I say, that's a state thing. And the reason that's the Constitution wasn't signed for a long time is that this held it up, that the states can't take away your rights either. The feds can't take them away, and the states can't take them away. And even though Porzio violated our warranty of habitability, Rosanna Joanne gave him all the money, $10,500 rent, that we deposited into court, and let him go with no deductions. When a warranty of habitability is your defense, and it was certainly so in this case, the landlord's rent, deductions have to be made from it. But not these crooked judges, and not these corrupt lawyers, and not lying, law-breaking John S. Porzio. Daily, the poor tenants who don't know the law, who don't know their rights, are ravaged by pro-landlord, prejudiced, incompetent Rosanna Joanne, and heinously violated. Know your rights. Go to the Supreme Court Library, 9th floor, Westchester County Courthouse, and look up those laws, and the librarians will help you find them. They're actually in the New York Consolidated Law Service, and they're right there in the shelf. Just look them up and read them. It's great reading. 8 times Rosanna let frail 78-year-old Franklin and 68-year-old Glendora lug 300 pounds of evidence, files, TV monitor, playback equipment, exhibits to court and out of court. 8 times. Maliciously knowing she would do us out of same. Equal protection of the law, we were denied. And this is a federal question. This crazy sap, Assistant Attorney General, wanted to take the case from federal court into state court. These are federal questions. These cannot be resolved by a state court. Yesterday, a person told Glendora he had known Robert W. Sweet 45 years, and that Robert W. Sweet tries to do what is honorable and honest. Next week, folks, well, maybe if nothing else intervenes, I'll go into her argument about abstention, how the federal judge should abstain from this lawsuit. I got to tell you the good news that the county attorney, Mr. Cecilio, approved my application, or we'll put it this way, did not oppose my application for informa pauperis in Glendora versus Porzio, a state case, another lawsuit against a crooked, greedy, lying, thieving landlord.
I've got a great job. Money in the bank. Last month, someone asked if I read the Bible. The Bible? I'm successful, I'm happy. What do I need the Bible for? I can get more from the Wall Street Journal. But that made me curious. So I decided to take a second look.
I'm on my feet all day. When I go home, I just want to turn on the TV and relax. But read the Bible? All those these and thous and begats? Who wants to struggle with that after waiting on customers all day? But then a friend showed me this version written in modern English, and I was surprised.
This guy I play hoops with said I should start reading it, the Bible. Man, I said, I don't need no Bible. I mean, it just ain't cool. So he goes, I read it all the time. And he beat me by 20 points. So he gives me his Bible. I read it. It ain't hoops, but it ain't bad.
What's your excuse? Before you make an excuse to avoid reading the Bible, stop. Take a second look. Pick up the Bible for 5 minutes, and you may pick it up for a lifetime.
And the worm comes out of the ground, and 3 inches away another worm comes out of the ground, and he says to her, "You're beautiful, I love you, I want to marry you." And she says, "Oh, stop it, I'm your other end." We're going to report to you on headline news what happened in the Stygian world of crooked lawyers and corrupt judges. And do you have a nominee for the Crooked Lawyer of the Week? I do. Robert M. Callaghy, who works for Satterley, Stevens, Burke & Burke at 230 Park Avenue, the same address as Judith Kay, our Chief Judge of the State of New York. Do you have a nominee for the Corrupt Judge of the Week? I do. Ralph K. Winter, Chief Judge, United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. I don't know what there is about appeals courts, but they have to be so crooked and so inefficient. Denise Coate couldn't have acted more incompetently. No judge could have. She denied, she robbed Franklin of his venue. He was certainly entitled, after paying $150, to have his case, Buell versus Mildworm, a RICO, a massive RICO action. He certainly had his right to have that case adjudicated in his own district, the Southern District of New York. But the conspiracy, serpentine, winds and weaves, and Denise Coate dumped Franklin into the evil clutches, the evil phalanges of the evil Eastern District of New York. She did this about 5 days before the return date of the motion. She didn't even wait for Franklin's opposition. This is Denise L. Coate. Maybe she will be next week's nominee for Corrupt Judge of the Week. And she did this wait, there was something else wrong with it. Without hearing from the other side. Oh yes, without hearing from all of the defendants. Only some of the defendants, the Pinkerton defendants, moved to have it transferred to the Eastern District. The other defendants never appeared. Those would be the Goldberger, Quinn, 3 marshals, an FBI agent, and a U.S. attorney, an assistant U.S. attorney. They never appeared. And so here is Denise Coate deciding a motion from some of the defendants, not all of them, deciding a motion before she gets Franklin's opposition, and deciding a motion 5 days before the return date. So naturally, Franklin appealed that, and naturally the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit bollocks that all up, and certainly their last accomplishment is justice. So they unjustly dismissed the appeal. And certainly Franklin filed a grievance against Coate, but that doesn't do any good in the Second Circuit. because Ralph K. Winter is there for his own selfish reasons and for his own self-centering accomplishments. And that's a long paper, and I ought to read that to you. The next headline is the United States Supreme Court doesn't do us any good. They don't like poor people. The decision that they made, that they won't let Glendora file any petitions even for certiorari, not that they'd ever grant it, but they won't even let Glendora file a petition of certiorari because Glendora can't afford the $300 filing fee. And so what Justice Stevens wrote about that is quite pertinent. Let me get it for you to read. All of the justices said that they wouldn't let poor people like Glendora come to their court, except Justice Stevens and also Justice Blackmun before he died just about a year ago. Justice Stevens, with whom Justice Blackmun joins, dissenting. In my opinion, the judicial resources of the court, meaning the United States Supreme Court, could be used more effectively by simply denying Martin's petitions than by drafting, entering, and policing the order the court enters today. The theoretical administrative benefit the United States Supreme Court may derive from an order of this kind is far outweighed by the shadow it casts on the great tradition of open access that characterized the United States Supreme Court's history prior to its unprecedented decisions. In re McDonald, this is somebody else that they've used. 489 U.S. 180, 1989, per curiam. And in re Syndrome, somebody else, the United States Supreme Court violated rights of another American. 498 U.S. Reports 177, 1991, per curiam. I continue, says Justice Stevens, to adhere to the views expressed in the dissenting opinions filed in those cases, and in the dissenting opinion I filed in Zatko versus California, 502 U.S. 16, 18, 1991, per curiam, and also Talamini versus Allstate Insurance Company. You know what we think of Allstate. 470 U.S. 1067, 1985, appeal dismissed. Justice Stevens. They're there to protect your rights. That's what we put them there for. That's what we pay them for. They're there to protect the Constitution of the United States. They're there to make America the great country that it should be. And what do? They defile it. George Lange, the chief clerk of the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and also he's a two-header. They made him circuit executive. He makes another two bloopers. Next headline is that there were 40 legal papers in 1 week. I believe that was the first week of March. Last week there were 25. This week is pretty good, folks. There's just 13. Headline news: what happened in the Stygian world of crooked lawyers and corrupt judges. George Lange has an unlisted number, the chief clerk of the court. That's just like the Beverly Hills Police Department. They have an unlisted number. The United States Court of Appeals and the United States Supreme Court are mercenary. All they want you to do is pay fees, They don't give you any justice. The courts are one of the worst consumer ripoffs we have in the United States of America today. The courts are one of the worst consumer ripoffs we have in the United States today. They don't like people who are poor. The United States Supreme Court is mercenary, just like the United States Court of Appeals. And Gannett Corporation is unconstitutional. About their annual meeting is next week, the 28th, I believe, of April. And they want a photo ID. And they have to have all other kinds of identification. If you, a shareholder, want to go to the annual meeting of your company and run it, as you should as a shareholder, you have to go through all that. And you want to know why? Because Curley has infuriated, and Gannett all over the country has infuriated so many people that Curley's is scared stiff. He deserves a retaliation, and he's scared stiff he's going to get it. One time I was driving to Maine, from Buffalo, New York, up to Gardner, Maine, Randolph, Maine, up on the Kennebec River, just south of Augusta. And along the Maine Turnpike was a woodchuck. And this woodchuck had been hit by a car, and the woodchuck was at the side of the road. We don't know whether it was a him or a her, but let's say it was a he. And so he was dead, of course, having been hit by a car going 60 miles an hour. But I didn't want to see the body at the side of the road being run over and run over and run over and run over again. So I carry big, heavy, thick rubber gloves in the trunk of the car and paper towels. So I pulled over in front of the woodchuck, and I went down and I picked up the poor body. The accident hadn't happened very long ago because the body was warm, and he hadn't died too long ago. And then I went down the embankment, and there was a small gully there. And after that, a fence, probably a state fence for I-95 or a federal fence for I-95. And I put the body there. And I felt so sorry for him. And then I started up the embankment to go back to the car. And the head moved. And the eyes opened. Ever so slowly. Naturally, from such an injury. He was alive. And then, very slowly, after looking at me quite a while, eyeball to eyeball, he slowly got up, went under the fence and into the woods. This brings us to the quote of the week. We have the corrupt judge of the week. We have the crooked lawyer of the week. The quote of the week is that Bob, who is the greatest court officer, New York State court officer in the whole world, he lives in Rockland County, and he watches the program on Cablevision, West Nyack, I guess we'll have to call it. It used to be TKR, it used to be TCI. It's now Cablevision. Anyway, he watches the program in Rockland County, and he's a very nice person. And I saw him in the elevator of the Westchester County Courthouse, and after telling Judge Cowie that Bob was the greatest court officer in the whole world, Bob said, "How is Franklin?" And then he said, "He's okay, I guess. I saw him on television and he was walking around in the kitchen." Bob Stevens said the same thing. He said to Franklin, "I saw you on television and you were walking around in the kitchen." The Pulitzer Prize winners I would like to point out the woman who covered the United States Supreme Court for the New York Times. I would like to point out the Grand Forks newspaper that had a tornado, a flood, and a fire all at once. And their newspaper building burned down, but they were able to get out an edition every single day. And their doing so helped the morale of the town during that terrible period. And I would also like to mention that a Pulitzer Prize winner is an alumnus from a chat with Glendora. You saw him on a chat with Glendora down around 88. He is the editor of the very strong and individualistic and valuable newspaper in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. His name is Stern. I went down and interviewed him once for you to show you what an interesting person he is. And he won a Pulitzer Prize for editorials. The Riverdale section of the Bronx is very interesting. That was one of the starting points of cable TV. Westinghouse had a system there. And then, of course, it's all been taken over now by, by teleprompter. No, it was contemporaneous with teleprompter in the Bronx. No, that's not so. Teleprompter was in Upper Manhattan, excuse me. But it was contemporaneous with that. And then the system was just taken over just by big people. You know how it goes. Swallowed up. Charles Dolan's picture was in the paper. He was in the Bronx, and he was announcing that News 12 would have 24-hour news in the Bronx. This is Charles Dolan that really doesn't look like him at all. His hair was red. I told him, you know, you and I are the same age. He says, really? He says, well, good for us. Why don't we have 24-hour public access? 24 hours a day of channel of News 12. We should have 24 hours a day of public access. The Second Circuit judges are too lazy to sign orders. Either they're too lazy to sign them, folks, or they're too ashamed to sign them. And I am very fed up with clerks who think they are judges, clerks who are suffragan judges. I'm really fed up with that. We pay these judges $140,000 a year or more maybe to do a job, and it's done by $300 a week clerks. And the Second Circuit is the Winter Wonderland. Ralph K. Winter. We're very disappointed in Sears. They promised to come over and fix a Maytag commercial dryer 5 times. They have failed. 3 of those times they didn't even show. Folks, the circus is coming to town. The Commission on Structural Alternatives for the Federal Court of Appeals. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we need it. Now, Elena Sassauer is going to speak 2,500 words. I have asked to speak. I don't know if they're going to let me speak because they want you to say what you're going to say. That's, you know what that is, folks? That's prior restraint. In the United States of America, that is prior restraint. Here it is, a public hearing. They want to hear what the public thinks of the U.S. Court of Appeals and what alternatives we can have for the U.S. Court of Appeals. And yet they want to know in advance what you're going to say so they can censor you. What else was I going to tell you about that? I have a few things that I would say about them. I might as well tell you because of prior restraint. I may not get a chance to say them before the public that is assembled in room 506 at the 40 Foley Square, the United States Court of Appeals building. It used to be the United States District Court building, but then we spent $500 million giving them a nice new place across the street so they could double-cross the Constitution all day and all night. So I'm going to read you some of the comments about the U.S. Court of Appeals that I would like to say Friday, April the 24th in courtroom 506. I said, can I videotape it? Oh, no. Well, can I audio tape? No. Why not? Well, for one thing, it's in a courtroom. Don't you know that courtrooms are open to the public? Don't you know that we have an open society here in America? Don't you know that you, the public, has a right to know? The reason we need structural alternatives to the Federal Court of Appeals is that they are fake. They're there to administer justice. Not at all. They use the bench, they abuse the bench for their own personal egotism, for their own self-interest. They use it as a reward for people they like, and they use it as a weapon for people they don't like. It's a fraud, and they take forever. I have one appeal down there, Glendora versus Cablevision, that's been going on for 2 years. And it's full of errors. And they abuse discretion. And the issue of suffragan judges making clerks act like judges. They don't sign their orders. And you have a cubby hole of a reception area. I'm not kidding you, folks. It couldn't be more than 8 feet wide and maybe 12 feet deep. And it's got in there a table, 2 chairs, 2 computers, a counter, a coffee table, a sofa, and a copy machine. And the public comes in there and tries to do things with their lawsuits, and everybody's all smashed and squashed together. Whereas George Lange has an office that's 4 times that big. And I've spoken to them about this for years, and nothing's ever done over it. And remember, they keep, and they will go so far as to rob you of your right to appeal. You have a right to appeal. If you sue judges, they call it frivolous. And then naturally, they're going to rule against you when you sue a judge, a dirty judge. They're going to rule against you. And then they're going to call it frivolous. And then they say, if you take an appeal on this, it will be called frivolous. So you take an appeal because absolutely you're going to stand up for what is right. And then they finally rob you of your right to appeal. Then they say to you, you can't appeal unless you have our permission. This is poor United States of America. And I heard Ralph K. Winter, say to a lawyer once, well, they taught me in law school that you never talk over the judge. Now, you just may lose this case for that reason. That's ruling on the merits? That's ruling on the law? That's ruling on the facts? No, that's ruling on my egotism. Oh, you upset my ego. They won't let you videotape in the building. They won't let you audio tape in the building. They discriminate against pro ses. They only let a pro se have 5 minutes for oral argument, whereas others go on for, I've seen them go on 20 minutes, I've seen them go on 40 minutes, I've seen them go on for an hour. And guess what? The U.S. Court of Appeals is an appeals court for bad decisions by district judges. Okay. You go down, there's 3 judges, okay? Sit at the bench. You go down, you argue before the 3 judges. One of them is a district judge. What chance have you got that they're going to be unbiased and that they're going to rule in your favor? What chance have you got? Oh, and also, First Amendment retaliation. If you say anything bad about the Second Circuit, First Amendment retaliation. You've lost your right to appeal. You've got to have our permission to appeal. Now, McLaughlin, I make an exception to all this with Joseph McLaughlin. He's almost human. The U.S. Court of Appeals is a taxpayer waste, a taxpayer fraud. They fail at grievances. This is where you go when you want to file a grievance against a judge. And Ralph K. Winter always rules in favor of the judge, and I've never seen him rule in favor of the complainant. You go into that little crowded room I told you about, and you'll see two big black 3-ring binders. And in those are the complaints about judges. And they won't tell you what the judge's name. See, they cover up everybody else if there's a complaint. Everybody knows the name. But they won't give the name. They won't give the district where the complaint is. It is so crooked and so cover-up and so surreptitious and so dishonest and dishonorable. And so you go in there and you look at all those complaints about judges and the rulings on them. You don't see the complaints about judges, but you see the rulings on them by Winter. And before him, John Newman. Everyone is in favor of the judge. I have never seen a complainant win yet. And so then you file a grievance against the judge, and Ralph K. Winter rules always in favor of the judge, and so then your only recourse is to appeal Winter's bad decision to the Judicial Council, and the Judicial Council just rubber stamps whatever Winter said. It is the worst, crooked, scandalous, scurrilous outfit. And they hate poor people, and they rob you of your IFP. It's a sham. And they make you an informed pauper. They make you a poor person. You've been wrong. You go to court to get what is right. You find out that the judge is corrupt. You find out that the lawyers are crooked. And so you appeal it, and then you file a grievance, and then you go to the Judicial Council, and then you go to the United States Supreme Court. By then you're broke, and you haven't got any justice. Lange has closed the court to the public from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 4 to 5 p.m., and that's against Rule 77. The courts have to be open to the public from 9 to 5. And the reason the U.S. Court of Appeals has so many cases before it is that we have so many bad district judges. If we had good district judges, there wouldn't be so many appeals.